I'm Jordan. This is Lee. Go ahead and introduce your, or hold on a second. I have some announcements I wanted to make real quick. So, first of all, thank you guys for your support, for the continued support. We're over 1,000 views. We're at 1.1K right now. If anybody wants to donate to the cause, they can donate via Cash App at CookieFam4. So that's COOKIEFAM4. And let's see here. If you want to be interviewed, go ahead and email me at straightoutofbspodcast@gmail.com or message me on Facebook or Twitter for social media. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for all updates on the YouTube channel. And share these videos with your friends on social media to spread the word. I'd really appreciate it. And also, one more thing. The first live stream of the Straight Outta BS podcast is going to be on July 2nd at 4 p.m. So mark your calendars if that's something you're interested in doing. It's going to be like a Q&A. I'm not sure exactly how it's going to go, but it should be good. I'm going to be taking suggestions, too, for the podcast there. So with that being said, go ahead and introduce yourself and where you went.
Hey, my name's Lee Veltman, and I went to a school up in Whitmore, California, known as the Cascade School.
Okay. What years did you go there?
From January the 17th of 1989 until August of 91, and I graduated high school from there.
Okay. Did you get transported, or did your parents bring you up there? Walk us through that.
My father transported me himself.
Okay. Did you know you were going to go there, or was it?
I had found out about 6 months beforehand being about 2 weeks beforehand that I was going to go when my sister came down on Christmas and told me I was getting ready to get shipped off to my third boarding school. So okay. Yeah, it was kind of a fun Christmas that year.
Yeah, I can imagine. So you just said you went to 3 boarding schools. What other boarding schools had you attended?
I went to Wentworth Military Academy when I was 13, and then up in Connecticut known as Oxford Academy.
Okay, and those weren't like the troubled teen industry, or how I kind of get the military thing, what that would be kind of like, but
yeah, no, the hazing and stuff in military school and the other things were just a part of my story.
Okay.
And like I says, a lot of people think that there needs to be trigger warnings and other stuff when discussing this stuff. Everybody's story is different, and everyone's a survivor in my book. So
yeah,
it's kind of been an interesting these last few years with what's been going on behind the scenes with everything, but I do like the movement and the way it's moving forward lately.
For sure. Yeah, I appreciate it. Okay, well, so the Cascade Academy, let's walk me through your first day there. Like, what was the system there?
Basically, like I said, I landed in Redding, California, which is northern up near Oregon and Mount Shasta, California. Once you cross the cattle guard there, basically a lot of the stories start sounding a lot similar.
Yeah.
I was taken into the administration little trailer building they had there. And basically my dad sat down, we talked for a little bit. My big brother walked in the room and said, let's go on a tour of the school. And I'm literally just there to supposedly tour the school.
Yeah.
Next thing I know, I'm seeing my dad drive down the road.
Oh, wow. So he just kind of took off?
Yeah, they left. He like says, I was walking around, he left. And that's when they take me over to the boys' dormitory and do the standard strip search. And kind of, like I says, I had things there waiting for me because there were certain dress requirements and different rules and stuff. So it is what it is.
For sure. How long after you got there did it take for things to fully sink in and for you to realize, like, oh shit, like this place is crazy, or not? Maybe it wasn't crazy to you. What was
crazy?
experience?
Oh no, it was very crazy.
Okay.
And I knew pretty much as soon as I got there. I was 17. I had earned my way there. I got to be honest about that. Had a pretty decent upbringing, I guess. Went to some decent schools. And I always like to be the class clown and get kicked out of classes. So, but as soon as I got there, I knew things were different. Like I said, this was a very closed group. It came from something known as the Synanon cult, actually.
I was going to ask. Yeah.
And then the Sea-Doo schools that came from that. So this is like what I consider a second generation clone out of those school systems. And actually Spring Creek and y'all are like, evolved out of the same thing. So do a few of your last podcasts, I brought back a lot of memories, actually. And so get there, boys' dorms, we had Emerson 1 and Emerson 2. And then there was the girls' dorms, which I actually can't really remember the name of the buildings that they called them then. And, you know, you go through your strip search, you get your big brother, you meet your dorm head, and basically, you know, it's like you can't go anywhere on the campus unless you're with your big brother or an older student. And then you learn, there's this thing that's out there on the internet called CEDU lingo.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of like this thing because it helps explain to people how people who go through these different programs all kind of speak this, all different lingos themselves, but they're all, it's very specific to the program and the different things that happened in the workshops and celebrations and the evolution of this. Like I said, you can watch a 5-minute video on Suburbia's Dirty Little Secret YouTube channel that really explains this stuff really well.
Yeah, yeah.
So like I said, that's where I kind of just started learning about the game and how to play this game there. We had what were known as rap sessions or forums every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, which if say I had a problem with someone or something was going on there and I wanted to address at the school, I'd make an indictment forum request, fill this out, put it in the box, and then request the, you know, counselor I wanted to be in there and all this other stuff.
Okay.
So that's where attack therapy and these circle groups, boxing rings, all this stuff kind of comes from these same things. And like I try not to get too confused when I'm like trying to explain this stuff, because like I said, this was only 2 years of my life, but it impacted me a lot. So I was introduced to my family. Fountainhead, I do believe, was the name of the first family I was in at the school.
Okay.
Basically, it was just everyone that came to the school around the same time I did. And then after I'd been there for about 2 to 3 months, we do this first thing that was known as the truth celebration.
Okay.
And so basically try to break this down to an easier way for others to understand. There was a 2-year program. When you're first there, you're the new student, and you have to go through the celebrations, which were the truth, youth, and friends, before you started doing the workshops, which were the heroes, brothers, imagine, IME, summit, brothers 2, summit 2.
So those are kind of like the seminars.
Yeah,
Okay.
Those are where the seminars all come from, these celebrations and things that all, and at the CEDU schools, it came from a book known as Kahil Gibran's The Prophet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So actually, like I says, I love that book to this day. So, but yeah, like I says, and it got really, like I says, to me, I knew I was there. I was in the middle, you're in the middle of nowhere in the mountains in Northern California. The nearest town, Whitmore, is like 30-minute walk down the road, and then it's another hour or so walking if you want to go to Reading. I mean, driving even is what I mean. So yeah, it was just out in the middle of nowhere. So like I says, they had this policy, you know, if you want to split, go ahead, there's the road. But of course, as soon as you left the campus, the cops were called and you were carted right back. Unless people disappeared. Like I says, to this day, I've looked for people that I went to school with, can't find them, or unfortunately for most survivors, the death is a lot higher than other schools.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
For sure.
suicides and ODs and other just stuff we get into because we are troubled, as they like to label us.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Okay, so how long after you got there did you go through your first seminar or celebration?
Like I said, I did the truth after about 2 to 3 months is when everyone goes through there. And then about 3 months after that, you go through the the youth. And then after that, about another 3 months, depending on stuff. And this is where they would break up families. If some kids were not progressing through the program fast enough, they'd get dropped back a family and have to do it with they wouldn't get to go through there. And so there was a lot of manipulation going on even behind the scenes with a lot of this counselors that were told to, you know, I had to play characters in these different celebrations and workshops. Character breaks is what they would call them, and do other things. So certain counselors would, you know, they would favor certain students, whereas other counselors would just ride them the whole entire program, make their life a living hell.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, these workshops and celebrations, for me, it's like I try to explain it to people is that I knew I had to do my time. So I tried to make the best of it.
Yeah.
And while the tools and tactics I was taught at these schools are basic attack therapy and stuff, I did learn some stuff about the real world that I didn't realize till about 10 years ago were a little beneficial, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But that's where learning about trauma triggers and character defects, working the program and all that stuff can get
Yeah.
for some.
Okay. Do you remember much about the processes in these seminars at all? Because I'm curious how they correlate to the seminars that I went through or others went through.
Right. Like I says, that's where with the first generation versus second generation cloning of these different seminars and workshops. When you were interviewing Clifford Miller,
Okay.
to me, he was, that was a great interview, by the way, him being a 12-year-old first student, you being one of the last ones there. Then I got to see that video you posted on Facebook with your, these, I'm just like, wow, this is what I wish had been around when I was still getting out of my school. And the bonds that you guys are making right now are going to last forever. And it's like I says, you're an eccentric group, but just the support you guys will have for each other over these next 10, 15, 20 years is going to be an amazing thing to watch, I hope.
Yeah, I hope so too. Yeah.
Back to the question about all these workshops and seminar stuff. No, the Truth, Youth, and Friends were very, in the Truth, it's the truth shall set you free.
Mm-hmm.
But they bring out, and one of the things that they did after you had your forum where you were just cussing everybody out and ripping everyone apart, they brought out a blackboard. We always kind of call it the blackboard experience. And this was when this is when I really noticed how messed up this place that I was at was.
Yeah.
The first thing they wrote down on the blackboard was masturbation.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And
as if it's a bad thing. As if it's a bad thing.
Well, like I said, that's where the discussion when you're in a room at 17 and there's 13-year-old virgins in the room and then you're in all these boys and you got to pretend. And then, like I said, so the discussion from there into other things, to me, it was very psychologically invasive.
Mm-hmm.
Getting information that they could use against you in other workshops and celebrations later on down the line.
Mm-hmm.
So that was where, like I said, as I realized it was really a messed up program, but I had to do the time there and to get visits and to be able to do off-campus things. You're either a Cascadian or you're not a Cascadian and you're in the shit list. And like I says, you guys talk about isolation rooms. Mm-hmm. We didn't have that. We had this thing known as bands, no touch, no talk. Okay. So it's self-forced isolation. If you were on bands, like if I was on bands with the school, nobody in the school could even acknowledge I was there.
Okay.
Staff could. And then they'd have to sit in the kitchen, and if you got what was known as indefinite all days, which were dishes, you were basically just slave labor at the school, taking trash, cleaning and stuff. So it was a very strict program. And so, yeah, like I says, the Truth was the one that opened my eyes up to this is going to be a different experience than anything I thought it would be. And then the Youth, but is when the indoctrination process is when I kind of really started. I didn't notice it at the time, but now looking back, hindsight being 2020, this whole ideology about your little boy, your inner me,
magical child, yeah,
and that was introduced. And then the Friends, when they had this exercise where they would always team you up with someone that you were friends with, and you would have to do these different exercises. And so, like, I remember this one where the other person had to turn their back on you, and they were the only thing they were trying to do was get you to react on an emotional level and feel that pain and run that anger. And so, yeah, and it got to be, after a year there, you're either drinking the Kool-Aid, on dishes, on bands, splitting, getting sent off to wilderness camps and these boot camps, and finding out that the transporters, boot camps, Ascent, and all the things that have come out recently were all tied together. There were so many people making money off of each other's systems. It's just a crazy story to understand that it is a multi-billion-dollar industry.
Yeah.
So like I
don't think people understand how much money these people have. I think a lot of people are kind of got their head in the sand when it comes to how much money and how much pull these people that are in power have over places like this.
I didn't learn about it a lot till about 5 years ago when I read Help at Any Cost by Maya. I can't say her last name right, so I don't even try anymore.
Slavitsky or whatever?
Yeah, her.
Yep.
Her stuff came out, and I read that, and I was just like, oh my God, this can't be true. My high school, all these different things, all connected to all these different things.
Yeah.
And that's like it says, that's when I found out about the W.W.A.S.P, the Worldwide Association of Specialty Programs Survivor Group. Then, like I said, that was before Breaking Code Silence. That was before Unsilence. That was before any of this stuff even existed. Then about 3.5 years ago, I found out about Agape, homies, and the Circle of Hope stuff in Missouri. And that really opened my eyes to how big the story really is. And now people are just unaware of how many survivors really exist out there.
Yeah. I think also Paris Hilton coming out, that kind of, blew open the doors too. When she came out and so told everybody that she'd experienced something like that.
Yeah, well, that's one of the funny things about Paris mentioned in her thing that she went to CEDU and in the Senate, and I'm just like, oh, finally, I can now confirm that, yeah, Paris split from the place that I was connected to too.
Yeah.
It's a small world out there when you start looking into the survivor community, and there is a lot of influence, and like I said, is the laws that have been changed in Missouri, Idaho, Colorado, Maine, is an amazing thing to have watched these last 10 years. So I'm very grateful to see what, like I said, with you coming out, you're very new, you're doing your podcast. There's about 10, 15 other potters out there that are doing T.T.I specific things. But, hearing your stories from Spring Creek, like to me, it's just a lot more hits close to home. Like I said, when you mentioned the lifeboat experience, and like I said, we had to do, that was in our summit. That was our last one, a 5-day thing. And during all of our workshops, you couldn't talk to anybody else at the school except for the other people going through the workshop with you. And yeah, like I says, the trust walks, the whole giving path, the giving tree, all these things that we did. Like I says, they had built a giving tree at the school. They had done all this weird shit. And to me, it's to try to comprehend that these things that they started with the noblest of intentions, covered up for all this abuse. And like I says, I can't but be honest about that. Some of these counselors and junior staff or stuff hooked up with students after they graduated or while they were still there together was happening to me at this school 30 years ago, So not to me personally, but,
Oh, no. Yeah.
Some of my regrets, I was like, I wish I would have had one of those sex contracts and gotten in trouble and not played the game as well as I did.
Yeah.
That's where regrets and like I says, to me, it's so hard to try to explain to people that, I went to 3 boarding schools, this 2-year cult one, it taught me a lot about myself, but then it taught me about a lot of things about myself I don't like today either. The character defects, the stinking thinking, and the obsession of the mind that can happen can be very overwhelming for some people.
Yeah. Especially if they're not ready to deal with all that stuff. You know what I mean? A lot of people just aren't in a good headspace. And when you push that on somebody that's already broken or, breaking, that can have catastrophic effects, in my opinion.
True. Very true. Like I said, that's one of the hardest things I've had to deal with in meeting all the survivors I've met over these last 5 years, doing other interviews, jumping on Zoom panels, and just talking with people. There are a lot of broken survivors out there that, I hate to say it, they're very comfortable being the victim and broken.
Well, yeah.
Trying to remind them that, hey, you aren't broken anymore. You're a survivor now. We work together as a group, and things taken out of context and get twisted up so fast. And like I says, I've watched all these different, Reddit groups, Facebook groups, and all these different things come and go. And I mean, I've seen people get doxxed. I've seen a lot of really just behavior these last few years. And it makes me sad, but again, you got to look at the bigger picture and try to not let the small details get to you, because trust me, I can get really passionate about this stuff myself. And I know everyone in the survivor community does get very passionate, and then politics, ideologies, and other things get in the way real quick in those private groups. And people need to disconnect every once in a while and take a break and, be okay with things. But again, I know a lot of people behind the scenes that are publishing books and working on documentaries these days. We're really looking forward to see what does come out and to see what you guys are doing, because, like I says, I try to explain to people that there are lawsuits involved right now in Missouri with the Circle of Hope girls stuff and the case they're trying to build against Agape, but it's not getting a lot of traction, it seems. But I'm really proud of Robert Buck and what he's doing.
Man, he's on there every day tweeting, man, multiple times, man. He's really pushing it. He's
really
trying, man.
So that's where
props to him.
Yeah, big time. That's where I'm so proud of what I'm seeing, you younger survivors getting together and supporting each other the way it's been going on. And even though, there's going to be tiffs behind the scene and certain people are going to get mad,
Yeah.
The boys need to stick together. And that's where, you know, like I said, I see a lot of support for the women. Very grateful for that. But I do know a lot of young men that in my time started trying to come forward 10, 15 years ago, and no one believed them. And
Before they get attacked, right?
oh yeah, big
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
Why didn't you say that 15 years ago?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the first thing. And like I said, as I've met a lot of survivors that have come to me, and that's where I try to be like, you know, I went to the school. I, you know, drank the Kool-Aid. You know, and then what happened at the school after I left is really, like I said, is Cascade didn't shut down till 2001, 2005, depending on who you ask. And it became something known as Julian Academy, and then it became Shepherd's Ranch, and then it became a Riverview Christian Academy.
So they're trying a rebranding approach.
I don't know, I totally
That's
did.
what a lot of these motherfuckers do. Yeah.
That's where I'm sitting on, is what it was and what it became is it's still the same thing. It's just went one extreme to the other almost.
Yeah.
So finding out about the Brown Schools of Texas and the Lester Roloff evangelical connections to all this other stuff, and then the CEDU Synanon, yeah, I am kind of explaining that a lot of these survivors went through very psychologically abusive things. And then on top of that, some of them are physically and sexually abused too, and they need to be listened to and heard. And like I said, I'm proud of everyone that's come forward. I'm so excited about some of the stuff I know that's going on with a lot of different people right now. But you know, that's where I try not to take sides. I try to not play the middleman at the same time either, because, you know, I know how much more awareness needs to be done. I know that even though many amazing things have been done, there's a lot of people who don't know the story, the full story. And like I said, is when I did learn about some of these, you know, when Colin or Clifford and you were talking and he mentioned the lifeboat experience, I was just like, wow, that's, you know, and then we had this thing known as the red light, green light game where they split the two.
They did that to us too. Yep.
So that's where it's so crazy to be talking to you all. I'm just like, wow, you all are just out, you know, and the path you guys have forward in life is not going to be easy, but hopefully it won't be as much of a struggle as some of us have had to deal with. I have a buddy of mine named Liam who passed away a few years ago. And hey, thank you. I found him online because I went onto YouTube one day. Someone sent me, hey, have you seen this? Because I was talking about it on Facebook. And I met Liam through Facebook, and we started chatting about his CEDU documentary that's on YouTube to this day. And the original 8 CEDU people that broke off and left and went and opened up Rocky Mountain Academy, Boulder Creek Academy, all these different offshoots that were purchased by W.W.A.S.P in 2005, was this weirdly weird link in this whole narrative that when I learned about it, I was like, wow. And then finding out at the Elan School where they had boxing matches and horseback, the stuff, and then all the stuff with turnabouts and the shoveling and the murders and stuff. It's a very difficult discussion to have without triggering people who don't know that this kind of abuse happens, and people, I don't want to say they try to cover it up, but they try to cover up the incident so the place doesn't look bad. And since people were groomed, and that's where it gets really into a very, very difficult discussion that, you know, some young lady who's in her mid 40s is finding out that, you know, this person that they idolized groomed them and then took advantage of them even through many different things. And now, to me, it was finding out that some of these people are still working in the industry that really started to bug me, and learning about Castle. Alexis, trust me, when I found out about Castle by the Sea and Tranquility Bay and all these places south of the border and what was going on with them having to dig their own graves and dig their own holes and, you know, hosing them down to do aversion therapy stuff on them so it's just, I can't quite grasp that part of the narrative yet, still to this day. I never experienced that kind of abuse. I never would want anyone to endure that kind of abuse, you know. And so I get into memories and stuff, but then I remember things like a guy named Paul Morantz, a guy who they stuck a rattlesnake in his mailbox trying to get him to shut up about this stuff with Synanon and CEDU. And he did a SIA convention talk, and in that talk he actually said, you know, not only did the students of all these places deserve an apology, their parents who were swindled out of all this money.
Yeah.
Too. And that helped me I was able to show that to my mother before she passed, and it helped close a door that needed to be closed 20 years later.
That's good that you got that closure, man.
Yeah, like I says, I lost the rest of my family over the last 6 years.
I'm sorry. Rest in peace.
No, they're alive. We just don't talk.
Oh. Yeah.
No, like I says, no, it's life is difficult.
Yeah.
And you know, like I says, that's when listening to Colin and his trust being used to pay. That was a similar story to me with how my parents paid for my school. My grandfather had a trailer park and a trust set up for my mom, and they used that stuff. And so it made my life, I felt manipulated. I felt, you know, like I needed an apology. So her kind of acknowledging that, but like I said, I'll never get that from my pop or my sisters, the other two sisters that I have that are alive still. And yeah, that's a real crazy story there. And so, yeah, it says to me, trying to explain this like you're doing with all the interviews you're doing and letting the survivors have that voice is so important to me to see what you're doing. And a lot of people need to hear these interviews and go back and listen to the other stuff you said. Because like I said, it's, to me, I can listen to them and I'm hearing whoever you're interviewing, I'm hearing their story.
Yeah.
And so, like I says, it is the fact that you all did the same seminar. You all call them seminars. We just called them workshops.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And when I found out, like I says, there's this whole big rabbit hole.
Mm-hmm.
Like I says, you already know we love jumping in these rabbit holes. And
Yeah.
I said, so the multi-level marketing crossover into the troubled teen industry is a fascinating rabbit hole with Herbalife and a bunch of other things there. Like I said, if I hadn't spent the last 7-8 years really researching all this stuff, I would think I was going batshit crazy sometimes.
Yeah. Some of the shit that I found out, yeah.
Look, some people have come to me with some stuff, and I'm just like, okay, you're gonna have to explode. Yeah, exactly. You're gonna have to explain that to me a couple more times because I have no idea where they're coming from and what they're trying to explain. And like with June and Beth and Em and Barb and all them that were all these, you know, roll-off schools and other Lighthouse Academy.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm talking. Hold on, there's a lot of lighthouses. There's there's Victory Christian. There's So yeah, I was getting confused trying to separate the different locations and how the DARE program with the Scared Straight Tough Love kind of all combines into the big picture here. And like I said, I hate that. I know the troubled teen industry will always exist. I just hope it won't be as abusive as it was, where kids are having to wear different colored shirts if they're runners or not. You know, they're being taught how to do 4-point restraints and to be okay with going to sit in the night. The fact that some of the stories I've heard you do, where some of these people are like, no, I love going into the isolation room. I actually got to be by myself and rest and not have to deal with some of this other crap out here.
Mm-hmm.
That's such an abusive thing to me, to try to, how you could like being in isolation.
Well, it's kind of like, to me, it's kind of like that thing where that they have with serial killers. Sometimes they grow to like their abuser or whatever. I forget what that's called, but I feel like part of it is kind of like that.
Yeah, Stockholm Syndrome.
Yeah, I feel like it's kind of like that a little bit. Because I spent 4 days in intervention once, and when I came out, I had thought only a couple hours had gone by. It had been 4 days. So I completely lost track of time, like completely. Just, and I was out of it, man. I couldn't even stand up. Like I was so like, my body just, when the sunlight hit me, when I came out, my body just like shut down. It couldn't respond to the sun because I've been away from it for so long, and just my senses had all been isolated for that long. And like when I came out, man, I almost fell down. Like it was crazy.
You're just kind of not triggering me, but one of the things that I've been learning about with the deprivation, sleep deprivation, food control, the workshops and the intensity of them was done to kind of do that intentionally at some points. So that's what I said is I've spent a lot of time these last 5 years talking with different survivors about trauma triggers and how we can learn how to not react to the trauma triggers we have, because we all seem to have these different trauma triggers. And it's very interesting.
Yeah, and I would say I've also found that like acknowledging that a feeling or an emotion is there, but not letting it control you is key. You know what I mean? Because if you don't acknowledge that it's there and you try and push it back, that's not healthy. You know what I mean? So if you acknowledge and say, okay, I see you, I understand that you're there, you know, and just allow yourself to feel through it. You know what I mean? I feel like that's a healthier approach than not just like denying it, or, you know, like, oh no, that's not really happening. You know what I mean? I feel like you got to have some fluidity with your feelings and emotions. You know what I mean?
Definitely. No, like I says, that's, you're speaking my language right now. I'm curious to know about the seminars that you all did. Did you all have to deal with like the running anger and like pounding on pillows or doing the rope and that kind of exercises?
So running anger, we had a thing called grungies, which was essentially like things that made us angry. I think I can't remember exactly, but they were like things that made us angry. And I'm not sure about the anger running, but I do know we had a release process with these towels. What they did is they would wrap these towels up with duct tape, and it would be on the last day of the seminar, and they'd have us close our eyes, and then and then everybody or the junior staff and the staff would come around and put these like I call them duct tape bats, but they were like they were essentially a towel wrapped up in a bunch of duct tape, so it became like a solid like bat thing. And so they, the staff members would go around and put them behind our back, and then they'd say, "Okay, now reach behind you and pick up what's behind you." And then they'd have us reach up, pick them up, and then they'd be like saying, "Now think about your dad that fucking raped you." Say a bunch of random shit, right, to try and trigger us. And then he'd be like, "Now let all that anger out." They'd like build it up and build it up and build it up in us, and then they'd be like, "Now let it all out." And then they'd start screaming at us like, "You're a fucking bitch, like you're a slut, whatever." Like, and they would know what would trigger you because like I've seen the paperwork. They would have these like binders of for each student. Like, these are our triggers. This is what the fuck you've been through. Like, they knew you, man. Like, you're not gonna escape it, man. If they wanted you to get through that, you're gonna have to open up. They knew what you had gone through, man.
No, because the fact that all these places had files on us for this stuff is kind of crazy. Like I says, I remember it was our Heroes workshop. And do you know Les Miserables? Do you know what Les Miserables is?
Doesn't sound familiar.
It's a musical.
Yes. I know what you're talking about.
It was the theme of the Heroes workshop we did. So like I says, that's a lot of Cascade friends will be laughing right now at this stuff. But that was the first time they did this other thing for us, where they brought all these cushions from the couches in the house into the workshop, and they go and they throw them down on the floor in front of where we're sitting, and they give us all socks for our hands. Wow. All right. I remember that time. And it's a really mental headspace because they like, who's your hero? Like, mother was mine. And then they go from that and they work you up. And it's like, I mean, hours process before
it's like right in your ear, just
tell them what you want to tell them that you haven't. I fucking hurt you. And I mean, seriously, people coming out of these seminars and workshops with blood vessels burst all over their face. It was insane what became just okay there for us. And like I says, for us, it was really weird because after we would get out of the Imagine and the summits, we would we did them for every time these celebrations and workshops got out, they would have these celebrations after the seminars and workshops, where they would open the doors, we'd come running into the house and we dance to music, and then you have this week of this high that like it becomes a part of your life where you just love searching for that high, I guess. And like I said, some of us get out and we didn't have a lot of good aftercare, no aftercare whatsoever. Like I said, I went to Hawaii for 8 months because I graduated the program because I came in January. I finished high school after 2 years because it was actually 4.5 years of high school for me.
Yeah.
So I went there at Christmas time, January, went down to Hawaii to work. My sister was living over there. And then I flew back for graduation in August before I went to college in Montana and Missoula, as a matter of fact, to be honest with you. So like I says, that's where learning about Spring Creek, like I said, I didn't know about Spring Creek 5 years ago, even probably. I heard about it, the references and stuff, but so many places end with Creek Academy or some ranch. It's a huge mess. And like I says, I've been trying to get, like I says, getting Circle of Hope raided and shut down, and the lawsuit started there was an interesting thing to be a part of and watch, kind of.
Yeah.
And to see the Breaking Code Silence group come together and do what they're doing now is just so great to see you getting the recognition you deserve. And you're still, like I says, you're a small channel yet. You haven't, but one day
I haven't been out a month yet, but we're already over 1,000 views, and I think that's pretty good.
Well, that's great for views, but when you get to 1,000 subs and you're getting 1,000 views every hour, so you're going to be having a lot more fun and doing the open chats and stuff. Like I said, I've been doing this podcasting thing with other buddies of mine for over 7-8 years now. And so, we can get in some real interesting pockets and interesting discussions with different people about some really crazy stuff. but sticking in, like I says, I try to stick in my little lane with, here, I know a little bit about this troubled teen industry stuff with boot camps and transporters and, different, like I says, I call them rehabilitation therapeutic communities or rehabilitation therapeutic programs. And then you can get into the halfway houses. And like I says, these halfway houses and the aftercare didn't exist in the program I went through. So you were kind of, here, you're done, graduated, good luck, have fun in life. And hopefully see your friends again one day. But that's what was there. And I know for you guys out of Spring Creek, like it's closed now, right?
I think it's an Airbnb right now.
Okay. I was looking on the map at it the other day because I was like, I know this is up in Montana. And so, yeah, I saw the Airbnb there. That's got to be weird to go back up there and visit it.
I want to, man, but I also want to do a ghost hunt up there. I want to like see if there's some energy
cool.
up there, man.
That would be super cool. No, we went
about something, man.
Yeah, about 6 years ago, we went to Reading for a reunion, a high school reunion. And that's when I was just sitting around the freaking pool at this Red Lion Inn, which we tore up in high school. But just hanging out there talking, it just, a lot of people got on us for the first time in a long time. And I was just shocked at what I hadn't known, that had just, so no one had wanted to talk about it for so long. And some people saw the Nexium documentary and got triggered by that. And now they're starting to do therapy. And, like I said, I will support people, like I said, hey, this stuff is very, very traumatic to survive. Some of you all are dealing with complex post-traumatic stress disorder. You're not only a troubled teen survivor, but you're a cult survivor on top of a troubled teen survivor.
Yeah.
And that's a very hard headspace to come from and to try to not, let that impact and affect the way you treat other people. It's not easy to do.
It's not. It's definitely not. Especially like what I deal with a lot is like, because people just don't, I feel like a lot of people just don't get it. Like the average person that doesn't know about these places just doesn't get it. Like when I say I've been through a lot, like they just don't fucking get it, man. Like you really, and I'm not trying to compare. Like I don't try and compare with them, but I'm just like, they just don't get it, man. Like
I never will. That was the hardest thing for me I tell this to a lot of my friends now that I've met. I was so sick and tired of 10 years ago and telling my story. I was in AA. I was in AA for 10 years.
Okay.
I don't consider AA a cult. I consider it a high control group that has leading and loaded language and use it. Anyways, but yeah, I was telling my story, and it just, every time I would tell my story in a meeting or at the different speaker events that we do, people would come up to me afterwards and, oh my God, did it? I'm like, what? And they'd give me that look that I'm a victim and I'm this, that I had been scarred for life by this experience. And I'm just like, no, I found recovery. I found a place, and finding recovery and then not understanding recovery and recovery talk, it's hard to express it to certain people that are, comorbidity, dual diagnosis, blah, blah, blah terminology that they use.
Yeah.
So that's where I had to really, like I said, for me to take a step back 5 years ago when I was introduced to that aspect. But, I always get to that point with someone where they give me that fucking look that I hate so much.
I hate, yeah.
And then I'm out, I'm sorry. From then on, it's either we're no longer friends or they have to do the action and rectify the wrong. And like I says, that's where this whole, you're working a 10 step. I'm supposed to go to them and be the bigger person and blah, blah, blah. I'm just like, no, I tried. I reached out to them in private. They blocked me. They, do this, they do that. And they run around now behind my back. You'll see it happen to other people too. That, your friends are coming to your this private DM. Hey, you're this person's talking.
Yeah.
So it's nice to see which ones are loyal and which ones do rectify the wrongs. But most people just burn those bridges, and you got to move on in life and not let it control you, because it can run rent free in your head real easy.
For sure. I definitely agree. Okay, so let's so you were at the second seminar, I believe. So then what do you remember about like the third, like all the rest of the seminar? Like, did you have like parent-child seminar, like where you see all your parents or any of that?
Actually, that's one of the money grabs that they did at the Cascade School. The parents were told to do other seminars.
Mm-hmm. Same with us. Yep.
So the parents would go and do these landmark LifeSpring, other large group awareness training things that I've learned about and studied now. So yeah, they would have to pay, $4,000 to go spend a weekend at that, so that on my next visit after I'd been there a year could be a home visit. I could actually go home. So unless they did this, I didn't get that,
Yeah.
So like, that's how some of that stuff worked there. Like I said, that's what I'm saying, is the celebrations, the first three were just like the introduction and the basic indoctrination, and then the other stuff with the heroes, the pounding of the pillows. And then you go into the Imagine, which is based off of John Lennon's Imagine. And it's very, like I said, that's where I don't remember a lot of that one, because I and the Me, where we had to make our own mask. And your this whole split duality thing that they did with you are your I character, and your I is who you are today.
Mm-hmm.
Your I protects your Me, your inner child. So that's
Okay.
the mask you wear that protects your inner child. And what is your mask? And so, like says, you'd put tattoos and, you know, weed, smoking joints, and all this other stuff on these masks. And we made, like I said, these were exercises we were doing in these 3-day, you know, workshops. And we would go and do these walks where we would be blindfolded and have to hold each other's hands. And it just got really, like I said, it was really weird for as a teen, because I was 18 to 19 going through these things now at this point.
Yeah. Okay.
And,
oh, go ahead.
One of the things is there was no dating allowed at the school. There was something known as dating privileges, but I never got those. So I didn't, you know, because I was kind of one of the ones that preferred just not the hassle of the program. I just wanted to get through it and get out.
What was the dating privilege? That sounds.
Oh, you could date people. You could like sneak off and go and kiss and do stuff if you got that privilege, but you had to have been there at least a year and a half. So, and it was like, and like I said, that's this whole thing. When you went from the celebrations to the workshops, it's kind of when you went from being a younger student first year into your now an upper school second student. Yeah. And that's like I said, y'all talk about junior staff. We had what were called third years. They had finished the program, but they stayed on, and those were junior staff, but we just called them third years. So it was some of the vernacular and the linguistics of talking with other survivors that I was like, oh my God, you're saying the exact same thing that I'm trying to say here. You all just use different terms.
Yeah.
That's where it got to me, it was beneficial. I was like, okay, I can now talk to other survivors when they say getting a haircut, or they say this, you know, I'm out of agreement, I'm popping off. And I'm like, oh yeah, you're talking about the music agreements. And like I said, I don't know if y'all had music agreements at Spring Creek. Did y'all, if you all said Tool or The Doors or Led Zeppelin, were you all out of agreement and getting in deep trouble for saying unacceptable music?
We didn't have that, but we couldn't write any lyrics. We couldn't like we couldn't like write lyrics, like even in our journal. I used to do it anyways. I used to fucking, man, I had like 2 or 3 diaries just full of fucking lyrics. Me and my friends would just sit there and write lyrics. We like one of my friends would remember one of the verses. I'd be like, oh yeah, I remember the next verse. And
that's cool. That's really cool. Like, that's we could have probably done that, but like I said, is if you mention these certain groups, it was just like I said, to me, I was trying to explain this to y'all, because did you know what Eddie Bauer was?
Yeah, I know what Eddie Bauer is.
Okay. That was the uniform. Everyone who got there, basically, you were put into these Eddie Bauer type clothes. You got your hair cut if you were a long-haired hippie boy. And like the girls that came with the mohawks and stuff, they're shaved heads too.
Yeah.
It was very much, they wanted their student clientele to look like the video you guys were showing me with all your maroon shirts and khaki pants. And I'm just like, this is so messed up that these uniforms are across the board the same. So like, that's where it was like, oh my God, then they have these, okay, why are those kids wearing the yellow shirts? Why are those kids? And that's where I was learning stuff these last few years that I was just like, I had no idea that this hippie commune compound that I grew up in, cult-like thing, had evolved into such an abusive isolation rooms. 4-point restraints is okay. Medicating the kids so they're zombified, sitting in the corner staring at the wall. That's better than, you know, so yeah, that's, to me, watching how some people could have rationalized and justify that.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, I actually have been called an apologist for the Catholic. Some people that went to Cascade, oh, you're just an apologist because you're friends with this person and this person. I'm like, hold on a second. What did they do? And that's where I've had I didn't know. And I'm sorry. I'm not going to be that friend anymore with that person. And yeah, you learn that some of these people you started to admire that you called your mentors in life were not the nicest people out there even, and took advantage of their positions.
For sure. And I also noticed that people that interact with others like that, they tend to use terms like they, them, stuff like that. And I'm not talking about anything gender, okay? I'm all inclusive, okay? What I'm talking about is the word they and them, okay? When people refer to others like, oh, they said this, that's something that them do or they do, right? who is they? Who are them? Define who they or them are. Like, don't just say they or them. That could be like a whole.
Those people. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Back to reptilians. It's the lizards. I'm just playing.
Yeah. But they tend to speak in that kind of language, and it's like you need to clarify.
Yeah, definitely.
You know,
Like some people I've been doing these Zooms recently with other groups, and some people come in there and started doing that kind of crap.
Yeah.
Like, hold on a second, I'm not a part of this group. You know, I didn't go to that school. Who are these people? And that's where I had to be like, hold on a second. If you're going to start dropping these names and accusing these people of being basically child abusers and kitty diddlers, I guess.
Yeah.
If they're not, and you have no proof, then you're slandering and defaming them.
Well, it's doxing.
Yeah. Well, like I said, doxing and slandering, it happens. That's one of the sad things about this survivor community that happens is doxing and that stuff is just kind of a byproduct. The further down the rabbit hole you'll go with some of this stuff.
Yeah, yeah. And not saying that it doesn't happen, because it for sure happens. There have been, it's been proven. It happens all the time. There's tons of people that do sexually abuse people in these places. It goes on all the time. But all I'm saying is like, if you know somebody by name, say their name. You know what I mean?
I agree. Like that's right. That's where I'm saying is I'm so agreeing with you is don't be afraid to use your First Amendment rights and say the truth. Speak in your truth, stand in your truth. But if it is a child abuse case that's over 7 years old, there is a statute of limitations out there, depending on which state you live in, I think. And that's where this juris, like I says, I get so lost on this stuff I run to attorneys. I'm like, okay, what is this? What's the truth? If they're in this state, if this happens, this happens, this happens, can they press charges?
Yeah.
That's where they want to just be careful in the private groups what they're saying, so someone doesn't go and tell the person they're talking about, hey, this person's accusing you of this. You might want to go to an attorney and protect yourself before the case gets filed and there's a thing. But that's where I think a lot of the newer survivors who are getting harassed or online, there's this ic3.gov and all the 800 numbers out there for survivors to use. So like says, a lot of people don't get all the resources out there that are specifically designed to help these survivors. And like as I was trying to help out with these survivors for a long time, and that's where I got into talking with them about the new religious movement cults. And
yeah,
I don't like that term deprogramming. I think people can't be programmed. I don't think humans are computers, but you can get mentally enslaved by an ideology and believe in this stuff so wholeheartedly that it becomes fanatical for them.
Yep.
So that's just where I tried to step back a couple of years ago, but again, I want everyone to speak their truth, not be afraid to tell their story and realize that, if you were a victim of child sexual abuse, there is no statute of limitations in most states in the United States.
For real.
A lot of having the courage to press the charges and going the whole entire 9 yards is you're asking some people to relive trauma that they'd rather forget.
Yeah, for sure. And it's okay to just, forget about it. You know what I mean? It's okay to move on, but for a lot of people it's difficult. Let's see. So the seminars, and then, so walk us through, like, what kind of person were you in their program? Like, did you follow the rules? Did you kind of just, what did you do? How did you roll?
The game. I played the game. Like I said, going to military school at 13, I think all the other stuff, I tried to run away before I got to the school. I took off, and they threw me in a psych ward for 10 days. And the only way they let me out of the psych ward was promise to go tour the school. So that's how I got there.
So like a medical release from the hospital, was that what that was?
No, they were trying to put me in the rehab. You had to be 18 to go in the rehab. And
okay. I see what they did.
A block from my house right now.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw that shooting here in Tulsa where the guy went and hunted down that doctor.
I think I've heard of it, but what happened?
A couple of weeks ago. It was the same place where my parents stuck me for 10 days.
Oh,
I was
wow.
up there to this rehab thing they had, but you had to be 18 to go into there. So they threw me in there. My dad went to Colorado to go ski, and my mom went to Mexico, and I'm sitting in this freaking room for a week before they got back. And like I says, they came and visited me. I've been there for 7 days. Promised to go up here without fuss, blah, blah, blah. Don't run away again. We'll let you out. And so that's how I got up there, basically. And as soon as I crossed the cattle guard, I knew that you play the game, you drink the Kool-Aid, or you're going to be doing dishes. and like I says, hospital corners, the fold down on the blanket on the bed, hospital style with a 1-inch gap from your pillow there, your hangers an inch, 2 fingers apart, in a dorm room where the dorm head and the assistant dorm head and one other person are all watching the new guy to make sure he's not suicidal, make sure they would take your shoestrings. They would do a lot of really messed up stuff if you were fucking the system there. And like I says, I watched many kids be there for a couple months, try to buck the system. Next thing you know, they're gone and they're off to Ascent doing the 30-day boot camp, and then they get to come back and start the program all over again. And that's, so like I says, these places trying to explain to people how much money they cost. You don't have insurance. Because school I went to wasn't accredited until I'd been there like a year, got accredited.
Yeah.
And so that was some of my research these last 10 years is looking into something known as NATSAP, the National Association of Therapeutic Schools and Professionals. Mm-hmm. It was started by the headmaster of the school I went to, him and 10 other guys or 10 other people from different T.T.I places. That's how NATSAP as an accreditation thing started in the first place. So yeah, I'm looking into multi-million-dollar things that you pay to play to get these schools to be, okay, supposedly.
Yeah.
I ran to my family and everyone, like says, if it wasn't for about 5 years ago, some people started coming to me going, dude, you got to stop. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, you're posting on Facebook every day you're posting 4 or 5 articles about different schools and different places. And they're all connected, da, 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 da. But that's just how much articles get written about different places that you'll find out about the more you start paying attention, the more you start setting your notifications on your computer to get notifications about T.T.I stuff. You'll get notified of stuff like says, I had to get out of a bunch of groups a couple years back because of that. Yeah. I didn't like the divisiveness. I didn't like Orange Man bad, Biden's this, Trump is, and I'm just like, okay, your politics and the T.T.I have nothing in common with me. Yeah. So yeah, it's been an interesting lesson to learn, but it sucks losing some of your best friends over that stuff. And me going to my father and my sisters thinking they would understand. And telling me straight to my face, we don't care. That's your past. You need to get over it. And I'm like, what? Over it? These kids are in these schools right now, and this is what's happening to them. And it gets disappointing when even your closest people are just telling you to chill out and relax, and you're trying to make a difference. But again, I've watched Carolyn and Katie Mack and all them do the amazing things they've been doing these last few years, and I've seen them struggle with a lot of different issues in life and come out ahead today. And I see starting down a path, Alex, I think this could work out great for you. I think you're a really interesting young dude. And I barely know you. Like, so this is the first time we've ever spoken to each other. No one is gonna understand that we met 3 months ago through Facebook T.T.I room, and just kind of clicked. And I'm really proud of the young effort that all these younger different podcasters and survivors are doing, trying to help their group get the recognition and the it's a lot more than just recognition, because you guys are trying to make such a difference and help all the other survivors focus on the places that we want to get shut down. And there's so many of them. But I have to go to Heal Online and the Saya and all the different web pages just to keep up with the news and just to kind of understand some stuff and see who's doing what where. So, I'm grateful that you're doing the podcast. And like I says, it's easy to do an interview. It's fun to do interviews a month later to see the comments underneath the comment video and see what's being said. And you're going to go far with this stuff. Like I says, that's, I don't know what your plans are, but I know you're coming into the room kicking and screaming, and that's a good way to come into this community, actually.
Yep, definitely. So how long did it take you to graduate then from the program, since you
it was a 2-year program. I got there in January, didn't split, didn't do anything wrong. I finished high school after Christmas, and so I got there in '89, finished in December of '90 from school itself. Okay. And I've done my Summit and my Summit 2 workshop, which is a whole nother discussion probably. Yeah. With the white clothes and going down to Reading and going to the mall and all the weird shit they made us do. That's another weird stuff. But what was I saying? What were you asking me about?
I was asking how long it took you to graduate.
Oh, the graduation. So I finished the program. It's a 2-year program. Is what they advertise it as. So I did the 2 years. Okay. Finished high school, finished the program. But since I didn't graduate, you didn't walk they did the graduations in August.
Okay.
So I, like I said, went down to, and I left the campus. I was one of these kids. There was a few of us that left, and a lot of people would leave mid-year because they'd finish the program or finish school and go to other places. But I gotten accepted to the University of Montana, but I didn't want to go straight there from the school. So I went down to Hawaii and got a job. Actually, tried to do construction, but I was kind of the 2 FOB, fresh off the boat.
Yeah.
To do that kind of stuff there. So I ended up actually cleaning houses, being a maid, and kind of going around and having a little fun cleaning houses on the North Shore and all over Honolulu in that area. And
so so wait, I'm kind of confused. So the program had you cleaning houses?
No. I was on my own. I had finished the program.
Okay.
I just hadn't graduated the program because it was in August. And I left in
Okay.
See, so I had 8 months of, I was told that, hey, you're done with the program. You're going to live in Hawaii with your sister. I was told these things. Like I said, I wasn't a choice. Trust me, my sister was marking bottles on me. If I didn't wash the dishes right, I'd get cussed out by my sister and her husband. So yeah, a lot of resentment still to this day are there. But so I went to Hawaii, and like I said, construction didn't work out for a day. I was like, fuck this. I'm not going to go and sweat and dig ditches when these guys have cousins that they would rather have their job, and they're going to make me do the shit work. Excuse my language. But anyways, yeah, so I did that, came back from the prom, which, like I said, is a really weird prom. And then came back for the graduation in August. My mother showed up for the graduation. My dad didn't even come. And then I went to college in Montana. I spent a year in Montana, basically realized I didn't know what the hell I was doing in school. Like I said, my family wanted me to get a master's in business administration. I wanted to be a ski bum. So I dropped out. Like I said, I went on my own. I went down back to Oklahoma, where I'm at now. And I did a lot of different odd jobs. Construction for a while. I worked for a law firm as a runner for a while. Just screwed up a lot in life. Ended up going down to Texas for a concert. I got pulled over with a mushroom and ended up doing a couple of years in prison in Texas too. So yeah, it's a crazy world out there. And like I said, people will judge me for my past, which, hey, I've had better people judge me for stupider shit than that stuff. I'm sorry. Legalization of marijuana and psilocybin is thing. That's what I went to jail for. So it's kind of, I'm kind of getting the last laugh now that it's all being changed. And a lot of people get so pessimistic. And it's so hard to stay optimistic in dealing with these survivors and how just sad and depressing it can be doing survivor stories day in, day out, year in, year out, for years on end. So like I said, I saw why people needed to take breaks. And like I said, some people hadn't been introduced to me these last couple of years and come to me and just said to me, their stories. I'd have been like, I'm going to not do interviews. I'm not going to talk about this stuff. I don't get it.
Yeah.
They explained this part of this stuff, going down to Casa, going to Tranquility, carrying the backpack full of rocks, running in a circle and doing all these crazy things that these people did do, makes my story of, going to Outward Bound and getting shipped off to this boarding school where, yeah, I had to do those workshops and stuff. And yeah, we were chopping wood and digging trenches and doing all the same things. It's just, I met some great people. I had some good friends, just like you did at Spring Creek. And those friends, like I said, a lot of them didn't last. Lost so many. But the ones that have been day ones, ride or die since then, I don't have to question their loyalty. I know their loyalty's there.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a benefit for me later on in life. Now, for me, it's just, I had a lot of people when I needed them the most, I thought, turn their back on me and stab me in the back themselves. And I didn't expect that from some of these people, and then to find out years later that they're in, trying to stir up the pot, trying to, make it so that I'm this bad person, because of, oh, you went to a T.T.I school, you must da-da-da-da-da. And I'm like, no, I'm sorry. I don't get your story. I don't get why your animosity needs to be there, because I didn't go to this, there was a place in Texas known as Excel Academy wure some really choice stuff. They said this person was coming at me just so hard about this stuff. And I'm like, I don't know, because I didn't go there.
Yeah.
So that was to me, that was just the hardest lesson to learn. And I feel so, that person was so angry and their rage had gotten to so much the better of them. Me just trying to explain to them I didn't understand what they were saying because I didn't go there. it still hurts. I still miss that person. I hope they're doing okay, but you can't, once someone has decided to disconnect, or cut off any communication with you whatsoever, you can't do anything about that anymore.
Yeah, you can't change them. You can't change their mind. Okay, so they wouldn't let you graduate, so you didn't graduate?
No, I did graduate. Like I says, I walked the stage in August.
Okay.
Like I says,
but they postponed it. They made because it was August, right?
like I says, I had graduated high school in December. So okay. I graduated the program and actual school itself, but since they didn't have the ceremony until 8 months later, I just had to wait those 8 months to do it.
Okay, that's interesting that they did it like that. That's interesting.
Yeah, I was one of those rare ones that had that, because I finished the program and the time requirements. Yeah. But yet I had 8 months to wait before I had to go off to college.
Yeah.
Other people in high school would have gone off and gone to do another semester at a high school straight, and that's where a lot of my friends did do that because they were younger than I was.
Yeah.
And yeah, like I said, some of them were able to transition very easily and do well in life. Other people fell back right into the same things they had come from and ended up becoming junkies and getting involved in gangs, and shit happens. But that's, like I says, being from the Midwest, Oklahoma, I kind of realize I'm kind of from, this very conservative part of America, and out there in California and all this stuff with that stuff and this new age, new ideology stuff I'm sending on. To me, can't just explain enough to people. I'll never get it. I lived it, went through it, but learning about it and trying to explain it to certain people who haven't walked the same path and don't get, like I don't know where Spring Creek came from. I know that it's one of the W.W.A.S.P programs, but who the two that started it, where did it come from, how did it get started? There's a timeline that exists, and I think some of y'all should write some books about this stuff, because I know that, like I said, the Cascade Sea-Doo stuff has gotten, I think there's 8 books that I know of already, and I know of 3 more books coming out this next year too.
There's also, I know one of them was about a girl who got sent to Tranquility Bay, which I actually was given that book by somebody who's no longer with us, rest in peace, Graham. But he gave it to me when I was in the program. It was his favorite book, and it was a friend of his. It was a book about a friend of his that got sent to Tranquility Bay, and fucking, dude, that book, man. Dude, that book had me crying, man. Like, there's not many books that like get my emotions going, but like she went through like a lot of shit in her life, and then she went to there and it fucking just got a lot worse, man. And it was crazy, man. The books like really hit home.
No,
man. Like,
there's a girl named Jennifer Lee Veltman. We share the same name, but we have no relations.
Yeah.
She went to there as well, and the day I met her was actually very weird. We had met through a friend of mine that was really into roller derby.
Okay.
And I made a post on Facebook, and she came to me, "Take this post down. This is a cult." And I'm like, "Yeah, I know. This is about the high school I went to. I'm going to DM you right now." And yeah, as soon as we'd been friends for 2 years, I had no idea she went to Tranquility.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, and so yeah, she's one of my idols. Actually, that's her and the girls that are doing these survivor groups, helping out the Agape. I mean, not the Agape, the Circle of Hope, and all the other ones. I will never, ever not be optimistic about this stuff because of what they've done these last 4 or 5 years, helping these new kids. Like I said, when Amanda came to me, the daughter of the Circle of Hope owners, was introduced to me, I was just like, call these people, call these people, call these people, and call the FBI. And I think it was a whole year later before they got that video out where her dad was saying to knock him out, and it made a rape. So it says a year before that was when I was introduced to all this new stuff. And I'm not going to lie and say these last 3 years have not been the hardest I've had to deal with in this whole survivor community. But it was worth it, It's worth it to see these survivors get recognition, get lawsuits, and change laws in these states to get these places so they can't do what they've been getting away with for so long. And like I said, I have no idea where it's going to go now, because these are open cases. These are, like I said, I am sometimes very nervous about doing interviews, because I'm like going, hey, I know this is an open investigation.
Yeah.
I don't know enough about anything to talk about it educated. So I just kind of say, go ask Robert, go ask Amanda, go ask the survivors that are from those schools, because they know that story better than I do.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Okay. Craziest thing you saw when you were there, and like worst thing and best thing, if there is any. And it doesn't, you don't have to have just one either.
Well, actually, that's where it's the worst thing I didn't see, but I know about because I was, did y'all have proctors or family heads or something like?
We had family representatives, and then we had family fathers that ran the family on a daily basis. And family representatives were the ones that did the phone calls to your parents and ran like
God, yeah. Okay, no, we didn't even have that stuff. Those were counselors that did all that stuff. I was a proctor. Me and a guy named Bruce were proctors of a dorm. There was Emerson 1. We had our own dorm in the building. Me and just one other person. We had our own room, and we oversaw all the dorms.
Okay, so you were like policing the other people, right?
Well, the dorm heads did it for us, and then we made sure they were making sure all the kids. Yeah, but yes, it was a huge privilege to be a proctor. You got to have your own coffee maker or refrigerator, and so. But
that was junior staff where I went.
Yeah, I was
just junior staff. Yeah.
So yeah, but while I was doing that, there was some racing in the boys' room, we'll say, and me and a couple of the dorm heads had to pull these young men into a forum and say, all right, you guys need to stop going into the stalls and racing to see who can let their swimmers into the pond quicker.
Oh my God. Okay.
So that was probably the craziest, nastiest thing I had to deal with there. And like I said, to me, the greatest experience, we had Olympics every summer, and we had wilderness. We actually did treks in the school. I did my first trek there, and then a second trek, I got the privilege to be trek support.
Okay.
So doing those, the Olympics and that stuff, and the memories there, and like I says, the Whitmore School, you can Google it on Google Maps. It's a Riverview Christian Academy now. The school I went to, and what you can look on the advertisements for the school today are like night and day. You know,
yeah.
The pool wasn't built. There was a basketball court, but there wasn't the tennis court. There wasn't the upper dining hall. We had a small little cafeteria in the main building. And so because of all the money they were making when I was like, I think I was like the 5th year. It had been going for 5 or 6 years by the time I got there. They started making so much money that they were hiring local laborers and carpenters to come up and build these new buildings and do all these new things. And it was amazing to see how it grow. And then I just heard this story. A friend of mine kind of got the school shut down. I'm not gonna lie. He drained the pond that they built there. He drained it one night as a high school prank.
That's awesome.
And then a lady, an educational consultant, came up. And I guess it had been going around in the back scenes, and all these educational consultants were talking about the Cascade School. And so this one came up there, and she asked to sit in a forum. And like I said, for me to explain these forums, it's every Monday, Wednesday, Friday after lunch. They would make the forum list. You'd go and see, oh God, I'm in this person's forum. You know, certain people, your heart would sink. It was just, oh my God. Sorry, I'm being too dramatic. But
you're good. You're good, man. You're good.
And so the educational consultant goes into this one forum, and as soon as like I said, sometimes the counselors were like, all right, let's go. And the room would be crickets.
Yeah.
Other times the counselor would be, all right, let's go. And it's, fuck you. You're a piece of shit, a whore, slut. Fuck you. You're just fucking da-da-da. You're trying to flirt it. And so, yeah, it would just go. It was either no one wanted to say anything, and the counselor had to instigate, or it was already instigated and ready to go. So, yeah, when this educational consultant came into this one forum, they said, all right, let's go. And it's just these girls attacked another girl. And I guess it triggered the educational consultant so bad within 15 minutes of this thing started, she got up out of her chair, ran to her car, and drove away. And basically, they'd stopped sending people to the school.
That's crazy.
They had to declare bankruptcy, and that's where I'm not quite sure, because Sea-Doo Inc., which was 4 or 5 different locations, was purchased by the W.W.A.S.P Universal Health Services, Idaho Health Services companies.
Mm-hmm.
But Cascade was not one of those. So it's this really just weird offshoot out of, you've seen the graphs that get spread around. Cascade's not on any of them. Cascade's not on any of them. But one of the saving graces I've had these last few years was the Wikipedia articles. 3 years ago, the Synanon Cult Wiki and the CEDU School Wikis were bare. Now there's so much information on them both that it's, to me, I'm like, go read these things, and if you have questions, ask. I'll do my best to try to explain to them. But like says Adam Egget, the comedian, was on Joe Rogan, and he's like says back in a couple of years ago, he mentioned this stuff, and that was like the first, oh my God, we're getting national Joe Rogan type attention.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's when Paris came forward, and I just was totally shocked that, wow, what me and my friends have been trying to get recognition and awareness done for 20 years is now finally, the real survivors are now being heard. And watching Paris and her mother, and to see her mother turn to her and say, I was like, I had no idea. And for them to be able to rectify that to me is like, says that's a gift.
That's
Yeah, most survivors don't get that gift again. And so I know it doesn't mean a lot to other people because of who Paris, she's a billionaire, not a rich kid, but to them it means the world. It means more than the world. So
well, if it can happen to her, it can happen to anybody. That's what people need to understand. Is that if it can happen to somebody that's as rich as she is, whatnot, okay, it can happen to anybody.
Right. No, so that's taking advantage of it. And that's where this stuff, with Danielle Bergaley and I can't think of the other girl's name that actually is the one suing Dr. Phil. Yeah, there's a huge story. This is a lot bigger than just the individual survivor stories that everybody knows about yet. I think, I could be wrong. It could be.
Oh, no, it's bigger. There's a lot more.
So I'm hoping to hear a lot more and see a lot more with what you're doing, because I like that you're staying in the lane you're in, doing the talking to your group and staying around that group is. I wish that would have been there for us when we started trying to come forward. Like says there was it was called Fortnits, Place for Wayward Flora on the internet. And that was a group where all of us doing and started gathering. And we created the CEDU lingo page, and we were just like, all right, what was terms that were specific to us with this, you're out of agreement, you have unacceptable music, if you don't have your big brother along, you have to go do dishes and all this. So we just started putting it all together.
Yeah.
And it was, like I says, it was when I read Maya's Help at Any Cost that I was like, oh my God, I had been in this mental cult ideology in my brain for 30 years that I thought AA was bad, and I thought everything was bad. And so it took me a long time to realize that after I'd been triggered really bad. And I quit my job. I drove an 18-wheeler for McDonald's for 10 years. So I quit everything to go be an activist and try to make a change. And yeah, there's a lot of people out there doing a lot of good work right now. And I'm very proud to have been part of that group and to see the torch being carried by a younger generation now, because that's what I didn't think would happen. I didn't think these younger generations would get as much recognition as they have these last few years.
For sure. Okay, so were there anything positive?
Yeah, like I said, I got my contract. This is a part of the summit workshop that I did that's hard to explain to people. Like me being an honest person, I'm an honest man. Lee Bellman is my contract. Okay. Easy to say, hard to live up to.
Yeah.
I am glad that I've always been very blunt and honest with people, and I know that can be controversial and say things out of pocket that some people don't quite get, and I don't intentionally always try to do it, but then there's sometimes I intentionally try to do it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I did learn a lot of good things. I also learned that I can flip that script and flip that switch. And go from being a nice, normal person into, hey, I'm back in that form. This is attack therapy. I got to destroy this person verbally and make them hate themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, like I says, I learned how to destroy people verbally very quickly, and it's so easy to do with some people that don't get that bull baiting and baiting people into get them to say things that while they're triggered, they're going to regret being recorded or being on a YouTube podcast or something later on down the line.
Yeah.
So yeah, because that's where, like I said, I've done a lot of these pods and interviews on this stuff, and I don't regret anything I've said in any of them. I've learned a lot by actually coming back and reading the comments underneath there, and like I said, I met you, and at first I was like, who is this young guy? What is he talking about? Then I started listening to the pods you were doing. I'm like, wow, these guys are saying things that I don't get because I don't know the names, but I get what they went through. I get the shoes they're walking in today because I had to walk in them 20 years ago.
Yep.
I mean, like I said, we could talk about this for days, but again, I can come back on for another interview more if people have a lot more questions about this stuff, because like I said, I met this lady named Dr. Janet Lalich, who was the NXIVM survivor herself, and she was educated me on something known as large group awareness training, and the seminars that connect to large group awareness training with multi-level marketing stuff. That I was like, she sent me down so many rabbit holes over the last years. But I met some really great people. Me and a guy named William Ramsey talk about paranormal and the occult stuff, and like I said, I got into the Oak Island mystery stuff. We get into some really, really fascinating discussions on some of these different 4chan boards and different Discord places we go to and hang out. But again, I got out of Discord a year ago because it was too much doxing and it was so toxic in some of these different places that, yeah, sometimes you got to unplug and get away from them for a while.
Take a step back for a little bit. Let's see. Do you feel like the staff there, when you were there, got off on seeing, like people inflict emotional pain on others? Did you get that feeling? Like, and I'm not talking about did you see specific, like, and you don't have to say their names if you don't want to, but like, did you see like specific people that were like, because you know how you can kind of tell that when somebody's like really enjoying seeing somebody's misery? Like, did you get that kind of feeling?
No, you're broaching a subject known as, like, it's called duper's delight. That grin these people get when they seeing someone being fucked with so hard that they're beyond broken at this point. They're at their worst. They're letting their true, just fucking, I had no choice but to sob uncontrollably, because that's the only way to get these people to back it the fuck off me.
Yeah.
And I would look up and see counselors smiling, going like that. I've thought this for many years. I know they had meetings. I know that in those meetings they're like, all right, I want you to break that one. That one's cocky. That one's got this attitude. There's a chip on that person's shoulder. Break them.
Or they're just quiet, or he's being too quiet. You know what I mean?
Once again, like it says, if they were a person were too cocky and out, they would break them to make them quieter. If they were too quiet and shy, they'd make them do all these character breaking exercises to build up their egos, so that people couldn't do that to them anymore. So like it says, it was a dual nature of the program of this person we have to break and this person we have to build up. And that was where you became counselor favorites. Like I says, there was a guy named Eric there. I was his bridge partner for a while. Like I said, I learned that, hey, that dude is, I get good with him, I'm gonna be able to get away with that. So yeah, it's such a crazy thing to explain that's what they were planning in private behind. Even the parents didn't know about some of the stuff that it's a social engineering experiment. We went through a social engineering experiment. It wasn't just behavior modification. It was social engineering to see if they could control us.
Yeah.
And so that's to where, like I said, I was in a cult. I was in a cult for 2 years. It was a high control group. They used their own loaded and leading languages. And just trying to comprehend that these last 5 years I think I've learned a lot, but I also know that I was questioning my sanity and just wanting to understand how some people could get so fanatical about this tough love stuff.
Yeah.
They would apologize and be okay with it. And that's where I was like, my parents did that to me. I have to somehow understand that while I hated what they did, they had their reasons. And like I said, there was a divorce involved. There was all these other extenuating circumstances. And it wasn't until I became okay with that it was okay for me and my father to somehow, like I said, we don't have a great relationship. We, have lunch maybe once a month, and he only lives a couple blocks from me. But at least we're having lunch,
Yeah.
6 years ago, we were barely speaking to each other, and it all had to do with sister getting sick. My sister committed suicide from therapy. So again, that's
rest in peace.
Thank you. Thank you. But trust me, I was the one taking my sister to get her electric shock. I said my sister was getting her brain electrocuted. I think she was misdiagnosed. There's a whole other discussion there that I wish I would have had my family up trying to help me understand what was going on as I'm finding out about Circle of Hope and the connections between the Duggar family and the Gothard method, all this other stuff that I didn't know anything about. So yeah, I really had to just kind of come to terms and understand that I will never get it, but what I do understand, I can hopefully help a few other people become okay with understanding too, so that they can help other people down the line that are going to stumble on this information and get triggered. It's triggering. I've told it to people a few times, the only difference between what we went through in these workshops and seminars and torture is waterboarding. Basically, we got sleep deprived, we got, control, we had to beat ourselves and get towels with duct tape on them and stuff. But yeah, it was torture and psychological abusive, and many people have walked away with scars on the inside that are way worse than any scars that could be shown on the outside.
And it's also definitely an argument that it was torture. Yeah. There's also a lot of people out there that would argue that it was torture. You know what I mean? It's mental. Because a lot of it there is mental. That's what a lot of people don't understand is there's like the 70% I'd say is mental, and then at least where I went, 70% was mental, 30 was physical. But there's there are other places where it was maybe like 60, 70, 80% physical and maybe 20% emotional, but it was still there. There's a balancing act that they try to do with each program.
I wholeheartedly with that.
Let's see. Did you witness any runners there? And what did you hear about runners? Did you hear any phrases such as what happens in the woods stays in the woods, anything like that?
Oh God, once again, we didn't call them runners. They were splitters. They split. One a week usually. Two, like I said, there were so many runners from our school that it just became a running joke that, all right, they'll be back in a couple of weeks. Oh, if they don't get caught, they'll get back in a couple of months because they're going to get sent off to a wilderness. Yeah. So it was one of those two options there. A couple of guys I remember split, and they had stolen some backpacking because we did treks. So we had backpacks and camping gear at the school. So they stole some camping gear, went off into the woods and did a fire and burnt poison ivy, got poison ivy all in their lungs from the smoke. So they came stumbling back in. So, one of the things that I did some research into was the splitting and the runners. And what happened to some getting picked up hitchhiking by 18-wheeler drivers and the rapes and stuff is one of the most tragic things I've ever had to look into in my life. And no, there's a lot of survivors that are missing, just missing to this day, because no one knows what happened to them when they split from one of these places.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very sad. Let's see. Did they have you said they had like a little Olympics thing, right?
Yeah, we had every summer we would do, I don't remember, actually, some groups would go on their treks, and then some would stay and do summer school stuff or crafts. We had an art barn, a science pavilion, and then the arts pavilion where they did musical and plays and stuff. But then if you weren't, like I says, there was a week where we did the Olympics between the trek and the summer school classes going back into normal school. And they did, like I says, a mini triathlon where actually I did this. I rode bike for, let's see, hold on a second. We swam for half a mile, rode a bike for 15 miles, and then ran 3-point-something miles. It's just a mini little Ironman thing that they did up in Mount Shasta, at Lake Shasta there. And then
beautiful lake.
Oh, it's so gorgeous. That's the thing is I was from this, Midwest plain. So I get into Redding and I'm like, okay, there's all these ranchers, but this mountains and this isn't California I was expecting at all.
Yeah.
So yeah, like it says, and so yeah, we did this treks. We did the Olympics where like they had relay races and stuff, and some people still have their Olympic shirts to this day that say the Cascade School on them and stuff. And yeah, it was like I said, it was just a lot of fun doing these different teaming up and having different teams going against each other, and then certain people would win. It was a week-long event that they did. So, because while there was all this psychologically abusive, you know, forums where attack therapy was just the norm, we did do these really interesting things too. And yeah, because I love the treks and going up to the Trinity Mountains and the Cascade Mountain Range too. But I went over to the Trinities and just climbing, and like I said, it was a 17-day thing. You do a 3-day solo, which anyone who's done any of these wilderness things, like says, the wilderness camps weren't the same as doing a trek, even though they're very similar things in its own right.
Yeah.
So yeah, because I love that stuff, and like I said, it affected so many of my friends, because one of the things in doing a lot of research into this, I had friends that were connected to SUS, which is Suburban Urban Wilderness Schools out of the Idaho, with SUS Carolina and the Trails Carolina. So like I says, this stuff did evolve, and it is a tragic story, but again, you can't do anything about it. You can't change much, and there's going to be troubled teens in the future that need help. And that was, you know, because a couple of years back, a friend of mine, my sister that committed suicide, her best friend called me up out of the blue and was like, I need to do something with my kid. I'm like, what? She's like, what do I do with my kid? I need to ship him off somewhere. And I'm like, no, you don't. You need to do this, this, and this. But he was eating morning glory seeds. He was doing some really weird stuff at 15. So she ended up finding a place down in Carolina that she liked, and she had to end up pulling him a month later because she couldn't afford the cost.
Yeah.
And it sucked. And again, he's doing better now, thankfully. But you know, having her call me up really flipped my life upside down, because I was basically asked to do the one thing I don't want to do, is be an educational consultant, helping a parent find a place for their troubled teen.
Yeah.
You have to spend hours looking through the places they bring you. And I'm like, the biggest secret, if any parent has a troubled teen out there and hears this and wants to know, the best advice I ever have to people is, if you're looking at a place, put abuse after the name of the place, because that's the only way you're going to find the negative responses. And so,
Sure.
like, and it gets, like, when they're talking about equine therapies, and then
Because otherwise you're going to get all positive. Oh, look how beautiful it is.
True, very true. Yeah, it's just to me, it was sad that hey, my friend's kid is basically, they're only calling me because I must know something about this, because I am just like that kid. And I'm just like, yeah, but you need to do this, and you need to get your, do this family therapy. Are you doing this? Are you doing that? Have you tried this other option even? And them not even knowing about that. That's what I'm saying, is they don't know about boot camps, and they don't know about summer camps and the difference between this stuff. And so, yeah, if they're calling you up and they're being court ordered by a judge already, it's too late. And, you can only just tell the kid, good luck, hang in there, get through college, and do the best you can if you can, because you've been labeled. And it sucks so much, because I hated being the label. I hate the labels to this day. That's where I don't consider myself a troubled teen. I consider myself a teen that got caught up in a new tough love thing that was the cool thing for parents to do with their kids at the time.
Sure. Okay.
In a little bit, just so you know.
What's up?
Oh, I got something up here in about 13 minutes I got to do, just to let you know.
Okay. Well, I was gonna say, did you want to? Oh yeah, one more question. Did they do anything like the general meeting? You know what the general meeting is at Elan, right? Right, where they circled up and they had people beat each other up. Did anything like that happen there?
No, like I said, it's called getting a haircut at Elan, by the way. When you would get up in front of the house.
Yeah.
And they would start that, and then it turned into this thing called the pit, and that's when the boxing gloves would come out.
Yeah.
That's me being politically correct as possible. We did something like this. We had the Monday, Wednesday, Friday, which that's the similarities there with getting indicted in a form and getting thrown into the pit were almost identical to my perspective, I guess. But we did, like, since they would do image breakers with certain students at the schools, where they would make them get up in front of the house at last lights in front of that. Like, this isn't in a forum. This is last lights. And like, 'cause I remember one guy had to wear a pink tutu and do ballet dancing. It was like, it was totally like a humiliation ritual, but he had to do it because his ego needed to be broken down some, and blah, 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 whatever excuse they had. I don't even know to this day. And like I said, that was one of the weirdest things to me, was watching that certain kids would be targeted by staff to get up there at last lights and do these humiliation. Oh, it's so funny. It's hilarious. All that. I'm like, it's funny to you, but they hate it. They're getting keys back in the dorms. And So like I said, that's where my experience changed from being a new student to being upper school. And that's where you go from, trying to just get through every day to trying to help the other kid just get through every day. And it was abusive. There's no other way around it. It was so abusive. But like this, for me to read a thing that, help at any cost was a thing that kind of made me realize that I had rationalized and justified for so long that I needed it, that I needed that tough love. I needed to go through this experience, that I didn't let myself realize what a survivor really was. And that's where I got in a fight with someone about 5 years ago, and she was just telling me, she's like, I don't want to be a survivor. And I'm like, well, okay, you don't have to be a survivor today. You can be a victim today. And she hated that. And I'm like, no, as survivors, we've got to realize that we went through some, crazy shit. And this girl had complex post-traumatic stress. Like I said, I think we all live with complex post-traumatic stress disorder in some way, shape, or form. So, yeah, and it says, I was just like, that's the thing is you've got to realize every day you have a choice. You're either the victim or you're the survivor, but every day you have to make that choice. And you're stinking thinking, like I said, that your stinking thinking can get real. I know my stinking thinking gets in the way, and I'm like, fuck it, let's just go fucking, run amok and go cuss out this person and get in a fight with anyone we can get in that looks at us crooked even. But that's like I said, that doesn't bring any satisfaction in the long run. So yeah, I've learned that, while the rage exists, I don't let the rage control me anymore. And I think that's been a hardest lesson for me, to just not be so angry at myself and my family and all the things I've had to deal with these last few years because they didn't work out the way I wanted them to.
For sure. Okay, and then I have one last question. Knowing what you know now, is it your belief that these places should or even could be regulated at this point? Or do you believe that they should all just be shut down?
I think see, that's a very hard question to answer because I've heard you ask it a few times. I think that these places will never be shut down, and I think they're already regulated through accreditation companies.
Okay.
So that being the case, I am glad certain states are passing laws not to let medical, like, I don't even know, like says where they're doing the Thorazine shuffles in these schools, like kids, like that's just wrong there. Isolation is wrong, teaching a 14-year-old little girl or boy how to do strangulation and 4-point restraint holds on someone. To me, it's just, where did they get okay with that being okay? That these kids at these schools, they're junior staff at 14 and it's okay for them to throw a kid in an isolation room and put them in this, restraint hold. Actually, there's a lot of kids in these schools right this second that I wish were not there, and I wish those schools were shut down, but that's a specific list. And otherwise, there's just a lot of places like this. They're not bad. They do have decent equine therapy, and they do have people working at them that do care. But are they doing the background checks on the new staff coming in? Can they keep these groomers and sickos out of those places? I don't think so. And that's where I hope they make those stricter rules for employments and staff that, hey, if they have a criminal violent background, not to be allowed to work in the schools, but, that's where there's a very fine line there, I guess. And I don't know enough to pick a side yet because I get labeled things myself, some people ask me what I was trying to do years back. I was like, God, I would love to be a consultant and do subcontracting for these different things. And they just hear that, oh, you want to be an educational consultant? I'm like, well, actually, I'm trying to work with W.W.A.S.P, epilepsy, and cannabis consulting myself, but that's a whole nother discussion too. So.
Okay. Is there anything else you want to add or that you want people to see this video to know?
No, like I said, I want you to keep doing what you're doing. Keep your grind, do your thing, because like I said, it's an amazing path you're starting on. And no, because I can come back on later on. I'd like to maybe get you to come on another pod with some other stuff and do some panels with us because I think your perspective is very different. And like I said, I've heard like says one girl, I can't remember her name, I want to say came up, but I don't know if that's right. She's got the 3-hour one with you.
Yeah.
That's a great discussion. And like I says, her saying what she did took a lot of freaking courage.
Yeah. And I wanted to give her that space, and even you could probably see at first she was like, oh no, I don't have to do it, it'll just take too long. It's like hella long, and I'm like, no. we're going to give you as much time as you want. I'm just going to separate it, do it a third part, you know. And I really wanted to give her that space because I feel like that's important for people to have that platform to share whatever the fuck they want to share, and however the fuck they want to share it. It doesn't matter how long it is.
Rather than saying the names, to me, I'm like, I don't know who these people are, but speak out. Speak out. Don't be ever afraid. And that's where, trust me, I was nervous before doing this. I've done freaking, what, 15 different pods on this stuff so far now, but I'm still nervous talking with you for the first time and not knowing really where you're coming from and different perspectives here. You can let little things get the better of you in this situation. And that's where I am really just trying to be careful all the time. That, you know, people understand that it's never easy to speak out against these abusive schools and the different companies. This is Teen Choices. The companies I'm after today are very specific and very, again, if you mention them too much, people that work for them will start showing up at your front door to you.
Yeah.
I'm grateful that you gave me a time today to speak. And like I said, I hope to see you doing more interviews and doing what you're doing with your live streaming is a lot of fun. It's a whole different world when you start doing live streams and getting people to come jump up on a panel and doing this stuff. So keep up the good work, man. I appreciate it.
For sure, for sure. And we'll have you on for part 2. We'll make that happen, man.
All right, brother, man.
Take care, brother.
All right, brother, man.